Hey, friendo, Steve here.
And Larson.
And welcome back to Going In Raw, the only pro wrestling podcast you need to be listening to right here at youtube.com/Stephen Larson. Available wherever podcasts can be found, and of course, taped live at the Twitch, twitch.tv/Stephen Larson. It's a big wrestling weekend. Tomorrow, of course, we're going to be live at the Twitch for Clash at the Castle. We'll be doing a recap afterwards. So that should be a lot of fun. Worlds Collide, we're just gonna sit back and watch that on our own. Not gonna do a live because right after that, is All Out on Sunday.
But I will say we do have a predictions video up right now for both Clash at the Castle and Worlds Collide. Of course, we're doing the live stream for Clash, so those picks are unofficial. However, Worlds Collide, those are locked in.
Well, they'll be locked in before the show. I might make one slight the women's match is locked in.
Oh,
but like our policy is before the show starts, you have until then to get it.
Are you gonna agree with Enforcer and pick Tyler Bate to win that main event?
Oh man, it'd be great to root for Tyler Bate, but that's one of those I'll believe it when I see it picks, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'd love it if he won. I'd love it if he won.
Heck yeah.
So yeah, like you said, our predictions video is up right now at Friendo Club TV. So check that out. Tomorrow, our predictions for All Out will be going live there. It's more of like a preview / predictions. Like, where are we thinking right now? What are we thinking for these things?
Yeah.
But yeah, of course, as we're watching any of the live streams, those predictions are fluid as we all try to either regain or retain big
It's
red.
all about positioning with these live picks.
For All Out, it's such a massive show. Part of me just wants to like do my numbers and then just lock them in and not give a shit. Unless I'm like way behind, I'm like, okay, I got to make some risks here. But
then you got to pick Mox to beat Punk or something like that.
Oh my God, yeah. We have a lot to talk about today on the show. Of course, Impact Wrestling on the road to Bound for Glory.
Victory Road. Even they're forgetting Victory Road is the thing.
Yeah, they're forgetting.
All the matches they're setting up or announced have been for Bound for Glory in October.
Following their lead, man.
Oh, fine. Okay. Oops.
Yeah. We got a SmackDown preview. We're saying goodbye to NXT UK with our final NXT UK review. We've got some notes from AEW's Tony Khan's media call. Tony Khan also comments about the CM Punk drama over the past couple of weeks. We've got an official confirmation that WWE is going to be bringing back a certain Man Train.
Well, I guess it's not official because WWE.
Oh, it's not from WWE, but there seems to be some
more or less. It seems like it's going to happen.
Yeah. Triple H had a lot to say in a wide-ranging interview with Ariel Helwani. We're going to talk about some of those comments and some superstars that might be returning that he had some things to say about, including Bray Wyatt, which was pretty interesting. But first, we're going to talk about this. Yesterday morning, Wrestling Inc.'s Raj Giri tweeted this out. I've heard an AEW star has requested his release but was denied. And while he waited to follow up on that tweet to get a response from AEW higher-ups, Fightful Select issued a report addressing several rumors about unhappy AEW talents seeking their release. One of the names that was reportedly unhappy was Malakai Black. And while Fightful had heard rumors that Malakai wasn't happy, AEW sources told them that any rumors or reports that Malakai had been released were completely false, and that they believed that any issues he may have had with AEW, quote, had been smoothed over to some degree. According to Fightful, there were also rumors that Miro had asked for his release, and AEW sources shot those rumors down. Fightful's doing a bit of a, hey, do you want us to address these rumors because they're out there floating around?
Apparently throughout, like earlier in this week, there was rumors like that Malakai had been released and some other things. Apparently, I hadn't really heard it until Fightful reported on it.
So later in the day, Raj Giri followed up on his initial tweet, reported this. I heard an AEW star requested their release, and follow-up sources indicated it was Malakai Black. He reportedly has repeatedly shown concerns about his mental health due to personal life and demoralization due to the booking and handling of his character. Now, first and foremost, I think I can speak for you when I say, hopefully, whatever personal life, mental health issues he's going through, he is in a good place, or he tries to get the necessary help to find himself in a good place.
Yes.
And I hope that if this is true, that whatever conversations he's had with AEW, they take those issues seriously and try to work with him with regards to that. he seems like a very creative, interesting person who has quite a bit of passion for the work he puts into pro wrestling. It was very disheartening to see his time after NXT on main roster essentially be boiled down to him being in a room.
But to hear about the thought he put into every detail of what went on in that room was really interesting.
Yeah. But it's also been kind of noticeable in AEW, even though he does have matches on TV. He has been given a stable. He has been given some really, really cool packaging that he obviously has a heavy hand in producing himself.
I would think so, yeah.
In terms of, once again, one criticism lately we've had with AEW is the stories. And it just seems like maybe if he is, in fact, not entirely thrilled with how his booking has been going on in AEW, he's a character, I believe, that sort of necessitates stories being told, not just endless promos and then some matches and feuds that seem to sort of dwindle, if you will. What's your take on it?
No, I agree. Basically, everything about his character, would seem to necessitate stories. And I think he's finally in potentially an interesting story with Miro. It hasn't really been given the consistent focus I think it probably deserves. Because there's a lot of really good stuff you could work with there. And like Miro, to his credit, one of the best promos in wrestling right now, is doing what he can to advance this story. But we haven't really seen much from Malakai in terms of advancing the story from his end of things. And it's I guess this is one of the things with AEW where the wrestlers are apparently given a great deal of freedom in certain aspects of the creative, but at the end, it all comes down to what Tony Khan deems is deserving of TV time. And if he doesn't think a certain segment, we're going to get into more of this later, is going to do well in terms of ratings, then he's not going to put it on the show, apparently, whether it would advance story, whether it help build character, whether it help build talent. Based on what some comments that Tony Khan made during the media call yesterday, it seems like he bases a lot of these decisions purely on numbers, which, again, we'll get into more, kind of can shoot yourself in the foot if the goal is building up characters and new talent, because early on, you might not get the numbers you want, but if you tell an interesting story, you're going to get the numbers in the end. And there was instances, like his first feud when he came in against Cody. Even that was kind of a mess. And he was, and then he got into the feud with Death Triangle, but then Phoenix got hurt. Pac seemingly was back and forth between the States and England, so they kind of had to put a pause on that. He was wrestling Fuego forever for some reason, and then they finally kind of culminated the Death Triangle thing. Now he's moved on to this thing with Miro. But it's a situation seemingly in AEW where every second of TV, there's competition seemingly over every second of TV time. And it's in terms of delegating who gets what and for what purpose, it's all up to Tony Khan. And you could have the greatest ideas, you could pitch him the ideas, he may love it, but in the end, if he doesn't do it, well, you're just kind of stuck there.
He's had 2 singles matches on AEW TV this year.
Jeez.
We're in September, man. He was also in the Fatal 4-Way. When I say singles matches, I mean one-on-one. He was in also a third, the Forbidden Door match for the All-Atlantic title. I'm looking at Cage Match right now. That's where I'm seeing that. He's had plenty more. I mean, I don't know, basically twice a month, every 2 weeks, he's got a House of Black match. This is one of those things I feel like, even with the Miro stuff, which has the potential to have some interesting stuff, it has been told at a snail's pace. Every week, it's a Miro promo where he talks about redeeming pagans. Every week, it's a House of Black promo where they're in a room where they're not doing a lot. There was a brief... there was, and now it's all coming together here at All Out with Malakai and Sting facing off. But none of those things really build. There's no build there where it comes to a head.
There's an introduction of characters, and that's the genesis of feud, and then things kind of happen, and then they have matches. Yeah, I mean, there's not story beats that elevates the tension of the feud that's supposed to be happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So who said that? RTG says it all went downhill and Arn blocked that black mass. So it's interesting, and I understand that Malakai does seem to be one of those guys where I don't know that his thing, now that we sort of see, it's kind of interesting. There was that period of time, when COVID hit, and we didn't really get a great idea of how things would normally go, because COVID only hit 5 months after AEW TV started. Mm-hmm. And since we've been out of it in terms of TV production going back to normal for, I guess maybe it's been a year or so. Has it been even a year since it's gone back to normal?
It was last July.
Okay, all right.
Both companies pretty much went back on the road.
And I feel like it's given us 12 months, an entire year of understanding, okay, what is normal AEW? What is Tony Khan? Mm-hmm. What is going to be his normal thing? And we sort of see it now, and I don't know that it necessarily fits in at this point with that kind of stuff, because it is storytelling. It's characters like Malakai Black and characters like Bray Wyatt, as Triple H talks about a little bit later.
Yeah.
Regardless of the performer, those types of characters are not easy to do. You need a keen mind on it, and I don't know if that's Tony Khan with all of his juggling of things. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and I don't know how you rectify that. I mean, we'll have some ideas when we talk about Tony Khan's media call, but you and I have been saying we're not there, but it seems like he needs some help when it comes to crafting stories.
Yeah.
And but hopefully Malakai will get what he wants in life, and he finds maybe they'll find a renewed focus for his character.
Yeah. One thing Tony mentioned, so I don't remember the question, but he was talking about storytelling in the actual Mox versus Kyle O'Reilly match. Those are the finals of the tournament. Mm-hmm. Determined who would face Tanahashi become interim champion.
Yeah.
And he mentions the sequence where Mox tries to hit a gotch pile driver on Kyle O'Reilly. Kyle O'Reilly reverses that into a triangle. Mox gets out of the triangle. And so to not get caught in the triangle again, he doesn't do the gotch pile driver. He does a standard pile driver. Mm-hmm. He was like, he was talking up the story, telling strengths of Mox and Kyle O'Reilly. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's interesting. In terms of what happens in the ring, that's good stuff.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Those little details that really elevate a good match to a great match. But I mean, that's not the type of stories we're talking about. We're talking about the stories that give the matches the emotional weight that they need, so we care about the outcome.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And far too often right now in AEW, that's kind of missing.
Well, dude, wrestling, we all know that it's scripted entertainment.
Yeah.
And so, can you tell stories exclusive, for example, Bloodsport, they run once every couple months or whatever it is. I mean, it's been a little while since they've run, but while they're running,
it's Mania weekend and maybe one other time during the course of the year.
Right. Yeah. So you can do that stuff where you just bring dudes in and they tell their own stories encapsulated in the ring during their period of time for their matches. But with weekly television, you have to have that added component. It is part of pro wrestling where things happen, people talk, people cut promos on each other, plot twists happen.
Here's an example in Impact we just saw this week. Mickie James came out and dropped a promo saying essentially, well, she called it my last rodeo. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna test myself against this generation of talent to see if I can still compete with them. Mm-hmm. And if I lose, I'm done. Mm-hmm. I'm going to retire.
Yeah.
And now, just based on one promo, every single match she has a story.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Based on, I know it's a case where someone is towards the tail end of their career, and you can't do that story for everyone, obviously. But I'm just saying, in the span of one promo, you potentially set up a storyline for her for, I don't know, a year, depending how long she wants to go.
Everybody has a background. Dude, look, Impact does it almost flawlessly sometimes. They generate stories for a obscene number of wrestlers on their roster. Some of them involve titles. Some of them don't. Some of them take up 5 minutes of screen time. Things advance every week. And the one thing that we levied a lot of criticism at WWE over is stale storytelling. Same thing happens week after week after week. And that's when people just sort of get bored and tune out. And yeah, you got to keep things moving, and you got to keep things going at a pace that will keep people interested, and they want to see these blow-offs. You know, when you introduce Malakai versus Sting, and it's in the middle of Malakai versus Miro, or Miro versus House of Black, I mean, shouldn't that sort of build towards Brody versus Miro at one, special event Dynamite, and which eventually leads to Malakai versus? Instead, they're just throwing them all together and all out.
Well, it's too often Tony Khan falls for the convention of, well, faces are friends with faces.
Yeah.
And so Miro's a face now. He's got a problem with House of Black. Well, Sting and Darby, they kind of have a problem with House of Black too for some reason. And so they're going to be a team now, whether it makes sense or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're just a team now for this match.
Yeah. Yeah. At the very least, Miro says, hey, last time people tried to be friends with me, they ended up, effed up or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's obvious the wrestlers trying to make the most of it. And in this case, it's just interesting. I do. You have to wonder, with things having changed at WWE, how many wrestlers might be getting antsy in AEW, because it's like, man, and I mean, this it's not a terrible point. Because I noticed this on Twitter the other day. Louis Dangor had mentioned this. And I don't have an answer for this, but it's a good question. What's the fan reaction going to be like when wrestlers request their release from AEW? What if they start doing it publicly now, the way they used to do it at WWE, and they get denied? It's just going to be interesting to see what the fan perception is a year from now, 2 years from now, in terms of how Tony Khan is conducting business. It's going to be interesting.
It is. It really is. Let's take a quick break here. Get a word from our sponsor, DraftKings. Hey, Steve.
Yeah.
Are you hyped?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
You're hyped, yeah?
Yeah.
If you're not, you should get hyped.
Why?
So are you hyped?
Yes, I'm hyped.
All right, you're hyped for a new football season because it's almost upon us.
Football season!
Yeah. And what better way to get ready for NFL Week 1 action than with DraftKings Sportsbook?
That's right, Larson. And to celebrate the return of football, DraftKings is giving new customers an offer that is can't miss. Bet $5 on any football game and get $200 in free bets instantly.
And if you're looking for more action, then experience the thrill of DraftKings early win promotion. Get up 7 and you win. Bet on the NFL team of your choice. And if your team leads by 7 points at any point during the game, you get paid instantly.
DraftKings is safe, secure, reliable, and you can deposit and withdraw cash whenever you want. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code RAW to get $200 in free bets instantly when you place a $5 bet on any football game.
That's code RAW only at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. Let's talk about someone coming back to WWE. So back on Tuesday, I believe, we spoke about a report from Fightful Select that stated that WWE had some interest in bringing back, get these hands. Braun Strowman. So yesterday, PW Insider stated that it was official. Braun has come back to WWE, reporting, quote, former WWE Universal Champ Braun Strowman is returning to World Wrestling Entertainment. Multiple WWE sources confirmed this morning, so yesterday morning. Strowman will be at this Monday's Raw in Kansas City. Spoiler alert. So in a recent interview with Ariel Helwani,
usually goes beforehand, but we got you.
It's going to be a long wrestling weekend, Steve. I'm about halfway, a little more than halfway through this interview, and so far it's fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
If you have an hour and 15 minutes to spare, go watch this interview that Ariel does with Triple H. It's fantastic. So he was asked, Triple H was asked about the possibility of Braun coming back. This is what the game had to say, these transcripts. And the transcripts for pretty much this whole section about returning superstars is from WrestlingNews.co. When it comes to Braun, quote, we'll see. He's like a polarizing person a little bit in the business, but for a guy his size and what he brings to the table is an amazing athlete. If this is what he wants to do at the highest of levels, then I'd like nothing more to give him another shot.
He talked about, because I watched this whole part right here, and he talked about first meeting Braun and seeing just how huge he was and being like, that's great that he's huge and he can lift all this weight, but I don't care about him. He says within 15 minutes of talking to him, he saw how his personality was and how much larger than life he was. And he was like, this guy is custom made for what we do. And he talked to one of the guys at developmental there and told him that. He said, come on, this guy's can't miss. And so yeah, he had very, very nice things to say about Braun. And yeah, look, I said this before when it was first announced. It's on them to win me over, but I'm totally going into it with an open mind because I'm kind of curious. Okay, well, Triple H has a lot of good things to say about him. This isn't just, hey, let's bring him into top ratings. He's going to have some sort of story for this guy, and I'm really curious to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was a bit more bearish. Is that what it is? Bearish?
Correct.
At the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if they come up with an interesting story for him and have him do interesting stuff, I'm not necessarily saying you have to like destroy sets like you used to.
Yeah.
But something interesting.
Well, he emphasized when he was talking about it, he emphasized his athleticism at the size that he's at. And so it's going to be interesting to see if they're able to use him maybe at a rate, where he's able to do the things that because he did seem a bit busted up by the end of his last run, even though that last match was phenomenal. He was doing sentons off the apron. It really was. It was a hell of a way to go out. And it was kind of shocking at that point. It's like, but it was clear Vince never knew what the fuck to do with him besides that one run in 2017.
Yeah, after that feud with Roman, like when he was, you could have put the belt on him and it would have been believable.
Yeah, and even Bray really tried to do some stuff with him, and none of it really worked. So in that same interview, Triple H talked about the possibility of Sasha Banks. So he was asked about 4 names: Bray Wyatt, Braun Strowman, Sasha Banks, and The Rock. And of course, Ariel Helwani gave him some room and said, say yes in terms of will they return, no, and so Triple H it was all we'll see. It was all we'll see.
Yeah.
But he had a lot of stuff to talk about these people. He talked about Sasha. He says time will tell. I think in a lot of ways, communication breakdowns are terrible, and there was a communication breakdown there for whatever reason. Starting back up that communication is not a difficult process, but it can be a process, and you have to go through that process. She's an unbelievably talented young woman that can do just about anything she wants. It just comes down to what does she want to do now with her life, her career, whatever that is. The passion clearly for what we do. There's a passion for other things as well. It comes down to what does she want to do. It's got to be right for her. It's got to be right for everybody. He was also asked about Bray Wyatt. If you want to go ahead and take this one.
Sure. He said, one of the most, and I mean this in the best way possible, crazy creative people I've ever been around. His mind just never stops thinking of creative, but it's like being in a whirlwind of stuff. So without the harness, without somebody to point the tornado, it's just all over the place. He's a victim of his own mind, his creative, and it's just everywhere, but I love working with them. He continues on later. Sometimes those talents are difficult to work with. I've always gone by the mantra that if somebody says to me, this guy's an asshole, but yeah, he's my asshole. Somebody can be difficult to work with. That's kind of the fun of it. Let's go.
He was talking about the difficulties working with Bray Wyatt in the most complimentary way possible, too. That's context. That's kind of important there. Yeah, he says, and he really seemed to stress it's much more fun to work with somebody. And we talked about this with the Malakai Black stuff. I think what he's getting at here, what I took away from it was there's so much there that can be so interesting. It's a matter, as he uses the word here, harnessing it. And he says, point and click is never fun. This is fun. Dealing with the Bray Wyatt, the person, the performer, and the character is difficult. But it's when he recognizes that there's a lot there that you can do a lot with. And you love to see that, because why wouldn't you want a guy who's just chock full of creative ideas? And then you have the challenge of something you and I have talked about a lot, and something you've said, maybe this will work better in Hollywood. Well, what cooler challenge is there than to say, okay, somebody who has a lot of stuff that he could offer a movie set, let's see if we can harness that energy, that passion, that creativity in the world of wrestling. That's an interesting challenge it seems like Triple H wants to do.
Yeah, seemingly. Triple H also talked about, in general, bringing back talent who would been released from WWE. Again, these transcripts from WrestlingNews.co, so we had to say. The whole roster, in some way, if you're going to look at it that way, almost 95% of our roster came out of NXT right now. There are a lot of people that I thought were really talented. When it came to Raw and SmackDown, it wasn't up to me if I thought they were talented. It was up to the Raw and SmackDown writing team and Vince. If they thought they were talented and wanted to use them for something. If they didn't, then that was the answer. If they wanted to use them, Vince's company, Vince's show, Vince's prerogative. If he says, I see this guy, but I see him in a different role. I see this woman, but I see her in a different role. I don't see this person as talented. I don't see them as where I want to go. Then that's his prerogative. Now it's my time to be able to say, no, I think this person is talented, and I want them here doing this. To go down the list. So for me, talent's talent. Doesn't matter man, doesn't matter woman, doesn't matter where you came from, doesn't matter what route or path they took to get to this business. They start out wanting to do something else and find this later in their life. Did they start out dreaming as a kid that this is all they ever wanted to do and approached it? Talent's talent. Somebody is talented if I think they could contribute to the product, and I think that creatively we can use them to advance what we do and to make this company bigger and tell better stories, that I want to work with them. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, he used the ice cream analogy quite a bit.
He did.
Vince, it's vanilla, it's dog shit ice cream, and I've got like
it was a running thread throughout the interview.
He talked a lot about ice cream.
He did about making your own ice cream. You make ice cream because you like ice cream, and
right.
A lot of ice cream toppings.
You go to the ice cream store and you're like, hey, I want this ice cream and that ice cream, but I don't want this dog shit ice cream over here. He was asked, of course, this is a question that everybody loves to hear. Do you consider AEW competition? He sort of parroted Nick Khan's answer of everything's competition. It's all competition.
Yeah. I don't believe he said sleep is our competition, but
he did not say that. He also said he confirmed the report that Brock Lesnar walked out on SmackDown. Mm-hmm. He was very diplomatic about that. Said,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, well, he said, he brought up his relationship, Brock's relationship with Vince. And when you hear, hey, that's ending, he says Brock's not a very trusting person. He doesn't trust a lot of people. He said, and you can always, his body language and his verbal cues are so great with Triple H because, even earlier when he was talking about, making it in WWE, there was some obvious subtext about AEW there. There's some guy now wrestling in front of 5 people. When you go to the gym and there's people there, they all want to be cage fighters. When UFC became big and they all walk up to you, they usually have a bunch of tattoos. Most of them are tribal. Yeah. Running down tribal tattoos was pretty great. Yeah, his sense of humor is awesome. He talked about NXT as well and the revisions there, and he says he did not agree with much of the creative there. Had nothing to do with HBK.
Yeah. But it sounded like more philosophically as opposed to the specifics of the day-to-day. Yeah,
you had a question about are we going to see more of the NIL, the next in line stuff, or is he going to go back to a philosophy? It does seem like he has sort of embraced the idea of the next in line stuff.
Yeah,
as well.
Because one thing you said about NXT is for the better part of 2, if not more years, they couldn't recruit because of the pandemic.
And
that's something I hadn't considered. And so NXT had to rely pretty much solely on their established talent because they couldn't train up and coming talent at the time because PC wasn't a performance center; it was where they were shooting TV.
The pandemic, I think people really underestimate, and he outlines this as much as possible, just how much pandemic affected NXT. I mean, the Wednesday Night War really just kicked off in 2019, in October of 2019, and then it was only 5 months later that pandemic kicked in and everything had to change, and AEW had the ability, and I'm not saying that this would have changed the ratings war or anything like that, but the bottom line is Vince was still there as sort of a barrier, I think, to NXT fulfilling its full potential as a third brand. Yeah. He would never say that. Talked a lot about when Vince sort of passed off the reins, how it was more of a gradual thing, how he knew that it was coming, or that he knew that he would be in that situation at some point. It's just when it actually happens is a bit surreal.
Yeah.
And Vince basically had said, this is your thing. Like, don't do it the way you think I would do it. Do it the way you would do it, which would seem to indicate that Vince would have given him, some sort of blessing, which you think Vince, as a man who wouldn't want to go out kicking and screaming, would be that way. So you got to think that Vince is probably at some sort of peace with, having a hand. I that's sort of, I guess, a whole other conversation or discussion about where does Vince McMahon stand on all this. But yeah, it was one thing that was kind of interesting was listening to Triple H sort of waffle a little bit about, because he obviously has to toe the line of Vince is not around.
Involved. Yeah.
He says, but he's my father-in-law. So in broad strokes, he can say, hey, listen to other people. Listen, and so he's very careful not to say, yeah, Vince is talking to me about the product, So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah. We'll get to more bits from that interview when he's talking about NXT UK, because there's some interesting stuff there. Before that, let's talk some AEW. So in a recent interview with Forbes, Tony Khan addressed the rumors and reports of the CM Punk drama, specifically that Punk led to Colt Cabana being removed from the AEW roster and being moved to Ring of Honor. That's what Tony Khan had to say about all that. Quote, there's certainly a perception out there that I don't think is accurate, that when I purchased Ring of Honor, and also as some of the contracts were coming up and I was starting to make moves, whether it was renewing them in most cases or not renewing them in some cases, reassigning people, there was a misconception that was perpetuated unfairly that CM Punk had anything to do with me wanting to move Colt Cabana to Ring of Honor's roster when his contract came up. I will clarify that just to take it head on, that he being Punk had nothing to do with any of the contracts I picked up, whether I did or didn't. But in particular, I did pick up Colt Cabana's contract and gave him a similar contract to do different work. I don't know if it was fair, and that got perpetuated. I also don't think that was fair to Punk.
I guess I take him at his word there. I hope that's truth. I hope that it just sort of seemed wonky.
It's like there's got to be probably situations where, an idea takes root. Yeah. And it gets discussed.
Yeah.
And there might not be any direct evidence one way or the other, but, if based how people are treated or how someone treats you, it might reinforce that idea.
Yeah, right.
And for example, if the idea backstage, well, Punk's here and then Colt's gone, well, something has to do with the other, and people talk about it. It just kind of takes root to a certain degree, I would think, whether it actually happened or not.
Yeah, that's one of those things where it's like, we're not there, we don't fucking know.
Exactly. And I'm not trying to say that's what happened, but there's been situations that we've heard about, not just in wrestling, but other places where there's an idea that's discussed, and certainly, we see it all the time if you're on Twitter. An idea kind of takes root, and people just like, oh, okay, well, people are talking about it, they must have some merit,
Yeah, no, I know, absolutely. It's like, but that is one of those situations where it's like, what, that's just not people. They want to pile on, they want to pile on. It's like, oh, well, Punk mentioned Hangman Page. Well, clearly he's the reason that Colt's not there, Yeah. So yeah. I don't, that's one of those things where maybe somebody one day will write a book and we'll find out more information.
That could be. Let's go over some of these all-out media call notes. I listened in on this yesterday. Some interesting stuff, some head-scratching stuff. So one of the Brandon Thurston from WrestleNomics, who does great work, was asking about Rampage's declining ratings. And so Tony Khan blamed a lot of that on a lot of his top stars being hurt. But now that a lot of them are back, he wants to do a reset. And he says, like in the early days of Rampage, I used to be able to, put top stars and matches on Rampage. You couldn't do that because, as he put it, he had to have the top stars on Dynamite, I would assume, to guarantee a certain level of ratings. And as a result, Rampage pretty much suffered. But now he says with star power coming back, I guess Rampages are going to be live through the rest of the year. He says that with the roster now, they could support 4 hours of TV. So maybe that's a little hint that we're going to get another AEW show. But this is a situation like this where, you got Punk out and Danielson out, Jericho out for a chunk of that, and Adam Cole out. Well, there's an opportunity to potentially tell some interesting stories and elevate some talent that might not be at that level yet. Yeah. And they didn't really do it. They didn't really do it.
I mean, that's one thing that we've talked about quite a bit. I don't want to, beat a dead horse or whatever, but or be a broken record, I guess. But like, you got to start telling some stories. It's like, dude, I'll still remember. And it's funny because we brought this up and somebody in chat said, didn't Miro destroy Darby Allin for that TNT title?
Yeah, so he won the title, yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Are they friends now?
And now they're friends now. Sense. But what a great story beat that was when Darby looked at Sting and he gave him that look. And that's the kind of story. It's like, a lot of people, maybe your casual fan, and even me, dullard, might miss some of the cooler aspects of the in-ring storytelling. Oh, this guy wants to make sure he's not going to get hit with this, so he's going to counter this move with this. Yeah. That's going to go over a lot of people's heads. I love seeing that shit on Twitter because it's like, oh, look at the attention to detail these wrestlers are putting into this. Darby Allin's another great example when he was feuding with Team Taz, and there was some great stuff there.
The crucifix roll-up,
Right, that thing. Yeah. But like some of the more obvious story beats that just make for damn good television when Sting and Darby knows he's about to lose.
Yep.
And he looks to Sting, and Sting gives him that validation that he wants from a father figure. Mm-hmm. And he's, saying you can't win them all. Yeah. And that's what that look was. Darby realized it, well done. Went back and got his ass handed to him by Miro, and Miro won the title. Those are the kind of stories that, you gotta put effort into those stories. And with Rampage, hopefully we get back to that.
Yeah. This was interesting. So my apologies, I can't remember the name, but someone from the Miami Herald was asking about Plan Bs going forward. Now that Tony Khan faced a bunch of injuries, do you have a Plan B if Plan A doesn't pan out? And he mentioned this interesting detail. And it was kind of unclear when he first gave this response, but I think he clarified it that essentially he had to rip up the original card for Forbidden Door. Mm-hmm. And he says during the call that they were going to do Punk and FTR versus Will Ospreay and Aussie Open. Mm-hmm. And the way he stated in the call made it seem like, well, that could have been at the show, but also could have just been a TV match to build because they had Punk and said, hey, it's me and Tanahashi.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Before like right after he hurt his foot, he said that was the match. And then I guess he clarified afterwards that would have been the build-up. That would have been a TV match. So there's a lot of things apparently he had to change.
That'd have been cool.
That would have been cool. So 98 Rock in Baltimore, I believe, asks about, is there a greater chance of working with WWE now? And Tony Khan said, I was optimistic at first after they made the change, but now I'm less optimistic after how they've treated me.
So I sort of assumed when I saw that it has to do with the contract tampering accusations.
I would guess so. It's interesting though because the first few questions he was giving very long answers, and what I said here that was basically word for word what he said in response to this question. Although he did say thank you at the end.
Thank you. Yeah.
He had nothing more
to punctuate that he has nothing more to say about that.
Yes. Samantha Shipman of Daily DT asked about the criticism that AEW had faced based on the differences of approach and how they went about announcing and going about crowning new interim champions. Of course, when Punk was injured, he came out and had his promo. There was a tournament that led to Mox versus Tanahashi, whereas Thunder Rosa a couple weeks back made her announcement that she was injured. It just led to a fatal four-way bout that we're going to see at All Out. So Tony Khan says he bases those decisions on how well those segments would do on TV. And he said he doesn't think that giving Thunder Rosa an 8-minute promo would do good TV numbers. He says, I also knew about Punk's injury several days, if not weeks in advance, several days in advance. So he had time to put that segment together. Whereas with Thunder Rosa, he learned about her injury hours before the show and didn't have time to put anything lengthier together. As far as the idea that a long Thunder Rosa segment wouldn't do well on TV, there was a point in time where Thunder Rosa was one of the hottest wrestlers in all of AEW.
Absolutely.
And then she won the title, and they haven't done anything interesting with her creatively.
Yeah.
And so if he wants to point the finger at, well, this segment's not going to do well, you got to look at yourself, Tony Khan, and realize, well, that's because I'm not booking my creative all that well.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. There was a time when, and I had mentioned that Darby Allin Sting thing, right? And I think the original point I was going for is, you got to keep building Darby Allin. You know, he had a decent thing with Brody King, and I feel like they did that coffin match, and now they're doing this. But like, I feel like even Darby should be higher up. Thunder Rosa absolutely should be carrying that women's division because she was so hot coming up, and then it just sort of felt like after she won the title, I think I remember she wasn't even on TV the next week. And then she had like a little short promo that was instantly interrupted, and by
Nyla Rose and Vicky Guerrero,
like the pie or the cake thing or whatever. And at the time, he was like shifting his focus to the TBS title or something. Like it felt like he was just really focusing on Jade. Again, one of those things where it's like, okay, well, it seems like he has the attention span for like one thing at a time, and you just squandered all that sort of goodwill with the fans in Thunder Rosa, because she was doing a whole lot of nothing for a long time. And so, yeah, you're probably right. The analytics will show you that an 8 minutes Thunder Rosa promo is not going to do good. Why? Because you have treated her in a manner that has made her so cold. Like, people have stopped caring because as the creative mind behind the show, you're not giving them anything to care about.
Yeah. Even if you go back, sorry, go ahead.
My last point here, sorry. Of course they're going to care about what Punk has to say because you focus on him, you hug him, and you call him the Plus Delta.
I mean, when he was healthy, he was opening basically every episode of Dynamite.
Yeah.
Even going back as far as after the Lights Out match. I know Britt won that. There was a lot of praise heaped on Britt for her performance because it was great. Thunder Rosa won that match, though.
Yeah.
And it was a stellar bout, and both of them had excellent performances. Thunder Rosa was off TV for a while after.
Right. Yeah. During the height of Wardlow's run against MJF, people would tune in for an 8-minute Wardlow promo. I don't know about 8 minutes, but they tune in for a lot to hear what Wardlow has to say. Not anymore.
Nope.
Because when you stop putting in the effort on creative for wrestlers, and that's why, look, every segment of TV matters. And when you build somebody up and then just forget about them, why are you bothering to build them up in the first place?
I know.
Like, you have to put the work in to create these draws. We talked about this yesterday on our UK stream, and I was going to just clip that and put it up on Friendo Club TV because I thought it was a good discussion, but we're sort of bringing this up a lot now. And I brought up, Tony Khan in an interview, I think it was like with Busted Open or something like that, had said that people have come up to him and said, hey, you remind me of Paul Heyman. And I think to myself, Paul Heyman did so much with so little. He had people flocking from ECW because Bischoff and McMahon were plucking him out of there. And so he made Mike Awesome champion. He made Tanaka champion. He made Rhino champion. He did so much and then on SmackDown, when Raw had all the big stars, Paul Heyman was beating him in the ratings and creatively because he was spending the time building those stories and building up those stars. They have the SmackDown 6 over there.
Yep.
So you got to put the effort in. You got to put the work in. You can't just take your most popular people, shove them on TV for half the episode, and then that's not contributing to growth. And that's why I think their rating has sort of been stale.
I know it's not. There's no build to their viewership. Yeah, Jorge Diaz is going to make this point too. Brings up that even just a simple change in locale, have Thunder Rosa come out and make that announcement in the ring in front of the crowd.
Yeah.
At least do that.
I know. Yeah.
At least do that. So she at least get her applause from the crowd because she's had a lot of great matches. She was one of the most over people in AEW for a long time.
Yeah.
Until Tony Khan squandered all that momentum with his garbage creative.
Yeah.
Or lackluster creative. Sorry. Yeah. At least give her that moment.
Yeah, right.
If she's going to have to drop the title because of injury, give her that moment in front of the crowd.
And they tell them, hey, you got 30 seconds here. So Thunder Rosa, God bless her soul, is like, number one, she's emotional over not being able to be there.
I know.
She's probably just found this out herself within the past 24 hours.
Yeah.
And so she's like, yeah, I got it, Tony. Good luck. It's like, okay, now you're out. There's probably some producer back there. Okay, wrap it up.
Yeah, I know. It's like what Eddie Kingston said. I know what this means,
Yeah, exactly.
I know my 30 seconds is up. Yes.
I know what this means. So yeah, it's and he seems to be deflective of criticism.
Yeah, he doesn't like criticism.
He's not a fan of it.
It's been established. Yeah, He doesn't like criticism at all. And then Nick Hausman of Wrestling Inc. There's some other stuff, and if I know a lot of the prominent wrestling journalists were doing tweeting along to it, and if you haven't, definitely take a look at the full rundown because there's some interesting stuff. Nick Hausman asked about the talent meeting, and Tony Khan just pretty much said, yeah, some of the stuff that was reported was true, some of it not. He said there was just some housekeeping. He said this stuff used to happen. These meetings used to happen all the time when they were at Daly's place, but they hadn't done one in a while. He just wanted to address a few things. And he did reference, he didn't use WB by name, but did reference the whole tampering thing. Bringing up some talent, had been contacted by some other company, and that talent came to him and say, here's something I think you should know about. And he said, based on that, he thought it was just something we should all talk. And he didn't get into more detail, but then he said, maybe if someone asked me about it, maybe I'll say something else. But then there's one more question, and they wrapped up.
Yeah. There was somebody there. Okay, wrap it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some interesting stuff there. And I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see where AEW goes from here, because I do feel like the days of it is going to be interesting to see how WWE handles releases at this point. If it's going to be them just allowing contracts to expire, if they're going to release people who are interested, they're not using and they're interested in going. I do feel like under this new regime, WWE is going to be a little less petty with how they handle things. But in terms of, Tony Khan, he's going to have, there's not a whole lot of people out there now who are, obviously contracts will always come up. And so there's going to be movement between companies, and you'll be able to capitalize on that, but not nearly as much as over the past couple of years. A year ago at All Out, it was like a sea change, it was huge. And then you had names like,
it felt like a pivot point. It really did.
It really did. You had people like, subsequent to that, Keith Lee, Swerve Strickland coming in. You had Athena coming in, a number of names after that. I don't know. He's not going to be able to rely on that as much as he had over the past year.
Nope.
And so it's going to be interesting to see if he's able to, you gotta understand what's working and what's not working. And it's like, I mentioned this yesterday, it's easy to buy a name, to buy a draw, to sign a draw, but you got to put in the effort and the work to build other people. And it's like, you look at Hangman Page as a perfect example. He had that amazing 2-year story culminating with him winning the title, and he just felt like he was on Hangman Island for a second there. It's like they had an opportunity to tell a really good story with Cole and the Elite, for example. And I just feel like that story, even though they had 2 matches, that story didn't really come together. And then, he found his golden boy in CM Punk. That feud was a mess, and Punk won the title, and Hangman's been doing a whole lot of nothing. I'm sure this match at All Out, because I'm pretty sure it's going to be the Dark Order and Hangman versus the Elite.
I know, they'll actually tell like a story that exists outside the move to move aspect of things, because there's a rich history there they can capitalize.
You got 3 EVPs. You'd think that they'd say, hey, Tony, let's just give us this time on TV and let us do our Matt Jackson acting, and we can tell something pretty fun here. And I think it'll probably be pretty good if they allow them to do that.
We've seen in the past, specifically when the Young Bucks took on Kenny and Kota Ibushi at the New Japan Long Beach show at the Pyramid there, that the Bucks and Kenny know how to tell a story in the ring then gets you emotionally invested.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And so I don't have any doubt that they can do the same here. I just wish there was more of it. Just wish there was a lot more of it.
You know, and it's funny because talking about the Young Bucks, like their EVPs, their tag team, it'd be nice if we can see some of their clout be used for the actual tag division now that they're not in the tag division, they're in the trios division. So let's see them use some of that power to get some stories told with Swerve and Keith Lee with the Acclaimed. They're in a thing right now. I want to see some more stories involving the tag division as well, now that the tag division is not sort of the focal point of multi-man matches. It's the trios division. So we'll see how they exercise their power, or if they're just going to be like, whatever, it's Tony's show.
I know.
We're waiting out our contract.
We got our own little part in the show here for the next 2 or 3 years, and then we'll see where we are.
Exactly. Yeah. So we said goodbye to our beloved NXT UK yesterday, Larson. And in the aforementioned interview with Ariel Helwani, Triple H talked about the decision to shutter the promotion and rebirth it as NXT Europe. These transcripts come to you via Fightful. He said, the decision to pull NXT UK back, it's the right decision for us. We had plans to do what we're going to do now right before pandemic hit and took all that away. We weren't able to do that. Our partnership with BT Sports allowed it to stay on the air the whole time, but the truth is it was totally different from where we wanted it to go. We're pulling it off the air now so that we can get to NXT Europe because it's tough to do both at the same time. Continue to operate a product, but build a new product around it. We were going to pull it off a little bit, bring NXT Europe back in a bigger way than it ever was before. And the intent is, hopefully, if we're successful, to replicate that so that it's NXT Europe, NXT India, NXT South Africa, NXT Mexico. Take those products, put them around everywhere, and eventually build brands in those markets locally and build World Cup scenarios around that to where they are competing on all that level all over the globe. And that tide feeds into Raw and SmackDown. If Raw and SmackDown are the NFL, NXT is collegiate football. It's all a feeder system to the overall picture. He points out some people prefer college football to the NFL. So
global localization is back on.
Oh, dude, that giant map with all the P yellow strings. He's all about it, man.
All the arrows going to various places all over the globe. Yeah,
he's all about it. NXT UK, sort of they did a really nice video package at the end to sort of sum up everything. I thought that was really nice, but otherwise it was kind of clear. I'm really kind of curious about the timeline here. Like if the original plan with this Trent heel turn was to make him champion, but was it known that Ilya was going to be down? I don't know. Of course, obviously, as we know, Tyler Bate got the win over Trent Seven. We know that because he showed up 3 weeks ago on NXT as the champion.
Yeah.
So he beat Trent Seven in the main event in a really terrific match.
Yeah, it was a really good match.
Saxon Huxley got his win over Kenny Williams with a choke bomb and joined Chase University.
Yeah.
Joined Chase U in the middle match, and then to open up, of course, as we know, Blair Davenport beat Amel, Eliza Alexander, and Isla Dawn in a really terrific match. That was actually
they gave
really
it a ton of time. A ton of
they
time.
Did,
so
yeah.
the last TV no, that's 2021. The last TV tapings I see here were July 7th of this year.
July 7th is when they finished up their TV tapings.
Yeah.
Man.
So at that point, Triple H hadn't even taken over creative yet.
Was that the same? Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to try to,
Again, maybe someone will write a book about it.
Yeah, that's kind of all we can hope for.
Because I guess the question is, did they know this was the NXT UK was wrapping up and going on hiatus so NXT Europe could be born,
right.
Or were at the time on July 7th when this show was taped, were they completely unaware that this was going to be it?
Well, I guess the question is, like, if what he's saying is true and that the idea was to do this before the pandemic started. I mean, did pandemic put off global localization? I'd always figured that it was like, okay, Nick Khan came in and said, hey, you don't have to be the global leader in wrestling.
I thought it was probably like, hey, let's keep costs down. Opening up performance centers all over the world, that's very expensive.
Well, yeah, and if your thing is it is, and if your thing is you're going to be, an IP factory, like you just focus on your top 2 shows. You feed those with the one NXT brand with your new stars, and then there's your IP factory. You don't need a million different performance centers across the globe. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. It'd be interesting to learn the timeline if there was at least the start of the plan in place to make the transition from UK to Europe, or if it was just like, okay, we need to do champion because Ilya's hurt, so let's just have this tournament, and sure, we'll have Tyler. I mean, having Tyler Bate win the title here is nice symmetry. Mm-hmm. He's the first champ, he's the last champ.
Yeah.
As much as I'd love to see Trent Seven taking on Braun Breaker at Worlds Collide up this weekend, mm-hmm. it makes a lot of sense for Tyler Bate to be the guy, essentially defending the honor of NXT UK, the only 2-time champion. He's like won every title there is there.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
I have a quick question here for before we get into our Impact results and wrap up our show today. Somebody here, because we're about to talk about Impact, Iguana Rob says that Impact, there's an Impact Joe Doring fundraising shirt, but unfortunately Twitch is not letting us. Is not letting his link through. I'm wondering if one of the mods, if Maggie, if you're still around, or Dope, if you're around, if you could find that so we can link it here in the Twitch chat, because I'm very interested in getting that shirt and here, tweeting it out there.
I'll do a little Google searching here and see if I can.
That'd be great. Liquid Blake also sub for 10 months. Impact Wrestling on the road to Victory Road and then Bound for Glory.
Thank you.
It was like you said earlier, it was a very talky episode, but it was an episode in which Honor No More tried to take all the other titles, and they ended up with the tag titles.
They got one of them.
They got
two of them, I guess.
Well, yeah, 1, 2, whatever.
Okay, it's just on Impact's. It's on the shopimpact.com front page.
Oh, great. Okay, cool.
So it's easy to get to.
Awesome. I'm gonna find that real quick. So yeah, and then Kenny King tried to oh man, that is a great looking shirt. Okay, awesome. So Kenny King tried to use the numbers advantage of Honor No More, mm-hmm. and a lot of just overbooked mess to win the X Division title from Speedball Mike Bailey.
Yes.
And luckily there were multiple refs involved that sorted that out.
Yeah. Probably the highlight of the show, at least for myself, was, I mentioned it earlier, Mickie James.
Oh yeah.
Came out about halfway through the show and dropped a promo. And as I mentioned earlier, it's saying that she's on seemingly her last run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
next time she loses, that's that.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
It was emotional. It was heartfelt, genuine.
Mm-hmm.
It was really, really good stuff. And as I said earlier, it's with one 10-minute promo, her story is set for the rest of the year.
Yeah. She has said
for another year,
fairly recently, I think just sort of offhand in response to like a fan on social media or something, that like she's really not sure if she's going to be wrestling again, but this does set her up for a nice story that, of course, it's wrestling. So, she'll no doubt have some sort of final mm-hmm. match where she'll be, retiring, but then, I could see her coming back.
See, what I'm guessing Masha's going to beat Jordynne Grace at Bound for Glory.
Yeah.
And then Mickie will work her way up mm-hmm. and face Masha for the title. Mm-hmm. Masha will beat her, will retire Mickie James.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's my guess.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that's how things are going to go.
Yeah. Masha is a beast. They've got such a terrific women's division there.
Yeah, the Knockouts division is fantastic.
It absolutely is.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, let's jump into it. Show opened with Mike Bennett, Matt Taven, taking on the Good Brothers for those tag titles. No Maria out there. She was barred from ringside after Carl Anderson winning last week. Didn't matter. Taven, Bennett, your new tag champs, hitting the Proton Pack on Carl Anderson. Of course, he eats the pin here to get the win. The Good Brothers, their time and Impact might be coming to an end.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
If you believe Finn Balor, their time at WWE might be coming to returning there in some juncture.
A new beginning, yeah.
A new beginning.
That'd be so interesting. They need to turn Judgment Day into like just a different Bullet Club. Judgment Day is a cool name if you just rebrand it and get rid of the cheesy stuff.
I'm not even in the name.
Come on, it's
not in the name at all.
Hey, that merch looks pretty decent though. That
it's all right.
The metal looking hoodie. Oh, come on now.
It's all right.
It's
sort of like that Undertaker shirt you made me buy, where the image itself is well done. I just don't like it on a shirt.
Oh man, that was a cool shirt.
It might have been like a cool poster or something.
A blacklight poster. I could have made a really cool blacklight poster. Yeah, it'd be cool.
But like as a shirt, you were wearing like a Kevlar vest of silkscreen on the front of your shirt.
Well, they should have done the inverted ink thing where they like remove ink from the actual,
that sounds like it's too advanced of a process for whatever WWE does over there with their merch, man.
It's a new era, man. Listen, Killer Kelly had a video package. She's terrific. This was awesome. She had like a voiceover. It was so cinematic. I'm like, bro, really I don't know what kind of deal she has with Impact, but one look at this, Triple H is going to be like, oh yeah, she's coming over here. Because this shit, and whoever's doing these video packages, whoever came up with their music,
give them a raise.
Just give them a raise and send them all to WWE because they're doing killer work over there.
This is really good. This is really good. Then we got Honor No More. They're backstage congratulating Taven and Bennett for their win. Edwards goes on about this right side of the war. And then again, he's like, yeah, some of us have our doubts. He singles out PCO.
Again, every week. Every week. He says week after week we have to worry about him. And then PCO sort of steps up to him and just says. So Vincent steps in again. This is just copy and paste every week, but it makes me laugh. He says, hey, PCO doesn't have any doubts, man. Some people just don't understand him. I'll take care of him. You just worry about the world title. No, Ed Edwards, you need to worry more about Heath because this fool is killing you every single week, and it's wildly entertaining.
He's getting wrecked by Heath. So Kenny King has a X Division title match right after this, actually. He says, tonight's not a celebration. We already got new tag champs. We're going to have a new world champ tonight. He's become a 3-time X Division champ. And then Maria says, I hate Scott D'Amore for banning me from ringside for the tag match, but he can't stop me from being ringside for your match, Kenny King. I'll be there to help you win.
Yeah, and then we have that match, and it's an absolute disaster. So, like, they get a ref bump. We have Kenny King winning by holding on to the ropes. Or, I'm sorry, holding on to Maria, who's on the outside.
Maria reaches and grabs his hands,
She's giving him the leverage there. But the ref that had done the ref, but who had been dealt the ref bump on the wrong end of it, saw that happen. And so Honor No More is celebrating. They're starting to leave with that title. And then the refs commiserate. And they're like, nope. And then didn't they like restart? They restarted the match, right?
And then they banned Honor No More from ringside, kicked them all out of the ringside area.
That's right. And so the match begins anew, and Bailey ends up getting a win here with a Rana. He counters with a Rana into a roll up after Kenny Kings looks for a royal flush. He gets that roll up for the win.
Yep. Then we got Brian Myers yelling at Scott D'Amore backstage about how Scott needs to get his digital media championship back. And then Scott says, you're the most professional wrestler. You should have your belt. This is like you're coming to dad and asking for his help.
Yeah, right.
Brian Myers, he's motivated at this point, goes, yeah, you're right. I'm going to get my belt back. He turns around. Bhupinder's there. Bang, punches him. Brian Myers laying on the ground. Bhupinder puts the belt over him and walks away.
Yep, he got his title back. After that, Jessica hands Ty and Rosemary some drinks. She said, hey, I won last week. Great news. Proof I'm good to go. We should go after those tag titles again. And Rosemary's like, yeah, you won. You didn't get distracted, but it's tough to get distracted when you're the distraction. And then Ty is like, hey, I got an idea. I got a match against Chelsea Green next week, so we can test out if Jessica is ready. And Rosemary's like, yeah, good idea. And they all sort of salute, and they're drinking their drinks, and Rosemary starts like sticking her tongue in it, like just trying to lap it like a dog. She's like, That shit was funny. Rosemary's so great, dude.
Yeah,
I love these three together. They're terrific.
They are. They're a lot of fun. So then we got a Violent by Design promo bit backstage. Eric Young says they're at a crossroads. He says Joe has his own path he needs to walk, but their paths will cross yet again. And so Joe steps away, of course. It was announced that his brain cancer has come back. It was, 6 years ago, I think?
I believe
he had
so,
surgery.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's returned. So we wish all the best for Joe Doring. We've really enjoyed his work and impact, and just hope the absolute best for him.
I'll be honest, I got a little misty-eyed at this little bit right here.
I know.
Because I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, we've been reviewing these impacts for a while. Has Joe Doring said anything up until now?
Not that I remember. Not a whole lot if he has.
And when he did the fist bump, he talked. He said, "We'll see you around," or something like that.
Yeah.
I was like, man.
I know.
And so as we've been yapping away here, I completed my order. So shopimpact.com has a Joe Doring shirt. It says 100% of the proceeds will go to Joe Doring in his fight with cancer here. So yeah, man, absolutely our best wishes to Joe Doring. And then Diener was like, are you leaving me too? And Eric Young said, I'm leaving, but it's up to you whether or not you're gonna follow. And then he just leaves, and Diener's like, I don't know what that means. Yeah.
Then we got
I'm lonely by design.
Yeah, exactly. Then we got the Mickie James promo. There's a lot here, and it's really good. So I highly recommend you go watch it. She talks about kind of the difficulty she's had the last few years. She references her release from WWE, lost some confidence about whether she could still compete with this generation of wrestlers. She says the fans have always been the one that have empowered me, and I came back to Impact, won the world title from Deanna, but then she lost it, and then after the betrayal from Chelsea Green, it got her thinking again, and so she had to go home, and says she broke up with the longest relationship she's had in her life, pro wrestling. Mm-hmm. And she asked herself, what do I have to prove anymore? And so then she talks about how I'm not retiring yet, but I'm going to start at the bottom of the division, work my way up to the title. But if I lose at any point, that's it. Mm-hmm. Done. Yeah. Says one of two ways. With me as knockouts champ, or me going home for good.
Yeah.
It's really good stuff. Really good.
It's funny. I appreciate the support of fans when, they're all there and everything. But, there's always a couple people who are just a little too into it, because she's like, and if I lose, and you hear one lady say, you're not going to lose. It's like, okay, just let her say her thing.
I know. This is obviously an emotional moment here for Mickie James.
Yeah. Let it play out in a dramatic fashion without you.
Exactly. As I'm sure it was intended.
Hey! After that, we had a Josh Alexander interview. At this point, when this happened, I was like, okay, yeah, that text you sent me about this being a talkie episode, you were not kidding.
Nope.
Because they're just chilling on a lounge a bench. And he's asked about Mickie James. He says she's one of the greatest Impact wrestlers of all time. He talks about never having had a one-on-one championship match with Edwards. He says
not having any match against Edwards Ed Edwards.
Oh, sorry. It just says he's never had a one-on-one.
My notes for this are all over.
I know. I'm not talking shit.
These are god awful notes.
I'm not. He says it's a match I've been wanting. He says, but now I'm the face of this company. He says Edwards can be bitter against Impact all he wants, but to try to convince me is a waste of time. He says I know what life looks like with Impact, and if he thinks I'm going to spit in the face of Impact,
without Impact. Sorry.
He's a fool. See, here's the thing: if I just run through it, nobody'll know. Don't correct it. So don't correct it.
Sorry.
So then Ed Edwards walks in. Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
I'm not here to fight you, Josh Edwards. I'm here to tell you. I'm here to tell you I respect how loyal you are to Impact. Yeah. But you're loyal to somebody who's not loyal back. That makes you a chump. And fucking Heath runs in and tackles Eddie Edwards. Security comes in to break it up. You can hear Eddie Edwards saying, get him off me! Get him off me! I'm like, you sound like the biggest loser I've ever heard. You have a title match. You come off like the weakest chump. Get him off me!
I know.
Oh, it was hilarious.
It was pretty funny. And then we go to what would be a commercial break. We come back. And Tommy Dreamer and Lance Storm, they've calmed down Heath at this point. And then Scott D'Amore walks in and says, hey, I love your moxie, Heath. Mm-hmm. I know what Honor No More did to you, what they did to Rhino, and this needs to be made right. But I can't have you going around attacking the number one contender when you got a pay-per-view coming up. Mm-hmm. So we give you a match against Eddie Edwards next week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Heath is like, hey, cool, that's all I ever wanted. He goes to Josh. because part of Ed Edwards' spiel to Josh Alexander was, "Hey, Heath didn't let you get your thoughts in last week.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was just so bloodthirsty to attack me, he wouldn't let you say your piece." So Heath walks up to Josh and says, "Hey, man, I meant no disrespect. What Eddie said was all BS." And Josh says, "No, it's not all BS. You did cut me off last week."
Yeah. And then Heath should have just tackled him because evidently Heath is the most powered up motherfucker in Impact.
Apparently.
He said, "I'm coming after you next, Josh Alexander." Josh Edwards. After that, we had the debut of Máscara Dorada, a.k.a. What was the name in WWE?
Grand Metalik.
Grand Metalik. Go Grand Metalik. Versus Alex Zane, Taco Bell guy. This was a lot of fun stuff. Máscara Dorada gets the win here with a Dorada driver for the win.
Now he gets the X Division title opportunity. It's Mike Bailey.
Oh, that's going to be a match.
Every episode of Impact, Mike Bailey just puts on like minimum a 3 3/4 4-star match.
That's going to be a banger match.
You got that right.
So after that, Jordan Grace tells, you can go ahead and do this one.
So Mickie James is just like sitting on a couch. Jordan Grace comes in, sit next to her and says, "Hey, I really admire you. I'm happy you decided not to call it quits, and I'd defend this title against you right now if I could. But I understand you want to work from the bottom and work up to your title shot." She says, "I just got to figure out who I'm facing at Bound for Glory, but I'll be waiting for you, Mickie, on the other side."
What's the school there? They were working with OVW. I think they brought in some OVW people against like Savannah Evans and maybe Mosh or something, or Killer Kelly. Yeah,
that's right.
So is that where Mickey's going to start, the OVW All-Stars?
Oh, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe.
After that, we had the main event.
What's the Impact thing where if you win a match, you get a contract? Is that the gut check thing?
Oh, fuck, yeah, I don't know. Didn't Adam Mayhem once try out for one of those things? I could be part of LAX.
I don't know if it was a gut check.
Look at me. I got a gut check.
Yeah, I guess so.
The gut check challenge. That's what Harv calls it here in chat.
Okay, yeah. I guess I am a highly knowledgeable of all things TNA Impact.
We're getting there. We're getting there.
Right
we got to start. Hey, that's what we should do, man. Is instead of replacing NXT UK with anything new, we should go back to the beginnings of Impact.
That'd be something
retro else. Impact reviews every week. Honestly, that'd probably be wildly fun, to be honest with you.
It would be a lot of fun. It would be a lot of fun.
After that, we had our main event, Deonna Purrazzo versus Masha Slamovich. This was a hell of a match.
Yep.
Masha got the win here with Snowplow. The thing, it's Mr. Plow. And then Masha gets that title shot.
Bound for Glory,
yeah.
Yep. Just looking right past Victory Road. And then Jordan Grace.
This Jordan Grace comes to the ring. She gives Masha an envelope, and inside there's a death warrant for Masha Slamovich. She's got the death warrant in 5 systems.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Masha's going to win that match. There's a SmackDown tonight. We got 1, 5, 6 segments. Wow, basically the whole show announced in advance.
Long-term booking here.
Probably because this was taped last week. So, first segment here, Roman Reigns celebrates 2 years as champion on the eve of Clash at the Castle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, also Ronda Rousey's final judgment.
Karrion Kross to make his SmackDown in-ring debut.
The New Day and the Viking Raiders clash in a Viking rules match. Mitch.
Maximum Male Models to compete in their first match against Hit Row.
Maximum Models. And then Peter Dune, Butch, is going to take on Ludwig Kaiser. Did you look at the spoilers for this?
No.
I did. I looked at some of them just because I wanted to see what the go-home was for the title match. But I didn't see. And then I think I read some of the Rousey stuff. It actually looks pretty fucking entertaining.
Interesting.
Yeah. You know who Karrion Kross's in-ring debut is against?
No.
Do you want me to tell you?
Sure.
Drew Gulak.
Not surprising.
He's about to get murdered.
Yeah.
So, we're going to be watching that live at twitch.tv/Steven Larson. That's going to do it for the show today. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We appreciate it. Till next time, we'll talk to you later.
Goodbye.